This video is sponsored and made possible by Nvidia. Let's quickly recap what happened in part 1. We worked out what we wanted to make, we made a 2D plan, put together an enormous island, built a wool skeleton, and filled it out. Then we built another wool skeleton, and that's where we are now. So this is where we left off in part 1, with most of it looking pretty complete, but actually this is about 50% finished. There's a lot more work that needs to go into this. So, what is the next step after we've just recapped everything? Well, just like last time, we're going to take all of our wool skeleton outlines for the smaller parts of the detail and start filling those in. And I will, of course, try and explain our thought process while we go through the next time lapse. So, let's kick off part 2 by getting straight into it. So filling out the smaller shapes is fairly straightforward. There's only one thing that I really want to talk about here, and that's really mixing up the type of blocks that you use. Just note that we're not using the mushroom block or the sandstone because we need some contrast between the smaller shapes and the stuff that we've already made. So mixing it up is extremely important. You'll notice that we use a variety of woods, but they're all within that same color palette. While we're filling this out, it gives me a chance to talk about how this video was made. This was filmed using a laptop powered by an Nvidia GeForce RTX 3080 laptop graphics card, one of the most powerful cards on the market, and it allows you to play Minecraft with RTX for Windows 10, and that's what gives us all of this fancy lighting and ray tracing. And if you're interested in the new line of RTX powered laptops, there is a link in the description. Now we're going to make our way around the rest of the build, filling out those smaller segments and leaving what I would call dead space, meaning that you have large areas where there aren't loads of small shapes, and this helps break up several parts of the build. When you're viewing close up, it might look very sort of blank and empty, but the key is when you look from a distance, you need to be able to have stretches of blank wall to help digest the build. And here we are. It's looking quite a lot cleaner without all the multicolored wool on it, and it's starting to take its final shape. There's only a few more stages left to getting this build completed. Obviously this is pretty mega, and the further you go back from here, honestly the more finished it looks. So what is the next step? Well, it is detailing, and this is by far the most lengthy part of the process if you ignore the terrain part of things. So what we're going to be doing is making our way around each of these in turn, adding windows, details, and all the little things that will make this build come to life and look like it was properly designed and not just blank walls everywhere. And because there's literally so many of these all the way around the build, this is probably going to take us the longest time. There are many detailing tricks to go over, and I'll try and talk about some of them as we go through it. It can be extremely challenging and difficult to know what to do with variously sized walls. For example, what you do here with this diagonal is very different to what you do with this big flat surface here. So I will try and explain some of our thought processes, and you'll even see yourself that we actually struggled quite a lot with some of these weird shapes. So let's hop into the next part of the progress time-lapse. This detailing segment is sped up to an insane amount because there is an awful lot to get through. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the things we added, because detailing is more than just adding windows, and that's really important. You'll see that we added some guttering down the side, we added some chimneys on the top, and we also added a trim around every single one of the roof lines, and then added a slab underneath. This helps sort of break up those two parts of each house. We also added things like balconies, balustrades, and just those little details that hang down, as you can see, made of granite there. On the bigger bits, we had a bit of an issue. As you can see, we tried multiple variations of these like detailed arches. Eventually, we had to just go for big and less detailed shapes that just help from a distance look like there's something going on. Things like indents in big empty areas of wall are a real way to detail rather than adding just loads and loads of windows everywhere. The key is to make sure that it doesn't look extremely busy from a distance. So things like multiple windows works in one part, but you need to make sure you've got a natural dead space elsewhere. Other tips include, if you have a large space and you're not quite sure what to do with it, break it up into multiple segments. Add a strip that goes round the middle and juts out a little bit, and that helps to break it up a little bit so that you can add windows on one half of it or add details underneath much more easily. Or, if you don't want to have it sticking out, you can just add a strip of material through the actual building, and that equally helps break up the build and makes it a lot easier to detail. Now, all of these sort of general hints and tips about detailing, it really just comes down to what your build style is, what you enjoy making. I can't really teach you all of the tips for building in Minecraft right now, but hopefully some of those will help you with your mega build. When it comes to detailing, it's very much a personal preference, and it's what will really define how your build comes out. So there is a lot of it up to your own creativity here. And here we are. We have detailed all of the mega build, and I've got to say, it looks very different from the last stage. It looks a lot busier, and sometimes that can be a good thing and sometimes that can be a bad thing. My favorite parts are the simplicity of the walls and the towers, and then you've got a bit more of a complexity around the house area. Overall, the effect is really, really pleasing to the eye. But now you might be fooled into thinking that this build is indeed now finished. One thing we are going to have a look at doing is mixing in textures. But some builds, you might want to add in some wall variations into your builds like so. But we're probably going to use a bunch of commands to make this easier. So that's the next thing we're going to do, is texture that up. But we're probably going to use commands for that. The real next stage that we're going to focus on is vegetation. So like I said, you might fool yourself into thinking that this is finished, but trees, waterfalls, all of the nature aspects add a massive pop of color, and they are so important. This island, it looks great, but it really needs nature on it. It really needs to look more natural. So more grass, more natural flowers, add some color into this place as well. It will make an enormous difference. So what we're going to do is we're going to time-lapse the creation of just a couple of trees, and then what we're going to do is probably copy-paste those same trees all over the island to save a bit more time. So let's hop in to the next part of the time-lapse and get this place looking a bit more green. Making trees is almost a tutorial in itself. There are multiple different kinds that you can make, but hopefully just through watching this you get a vague idea of how it's made. You've got to start with your singular stem, build it outwards, and depending on what you're going for, in this case we're going for more spruce-like trees, you just want to give it that nice Christmas tree shape. And we also added just general leaves around and some boulders, and we're going to paste these everywhere. And here we are, very, very nearly complete on this mega build. So as you can see, the trees have added a huge element. We did go ahead and copy paste various of them just to speed up the process. Tree building is extremely time consuming, and we also added a bunch of boulders and rocks around as well to make it look a bit more natural than just the terrain. We also added a few flowers, although you can't really see them from a distance. You have to get up close to see that there's a few there. But there we are. We also added, as well as the natural trees there, we also added some potted plants and some leaves and some things over here, including some decoration of the walkways down here with some flowers and all that kind of stuff. This is what adds that pop of color that helps break up the monotony of all of that yellow and orange hues. So it is a very important step to make sure that you add the nature and all of that kind of thing. Now, we are not 100% finished yet. There is one last thing that we need to add to this build, and that is lighting. And you can't really tell that it needs lighting because it's still day. But if I set it to night, you can see it's pretty dark. And at midnight, it's even more prevalent. You can see that there's some lights where there's campfires, but overall, it is very, very dark. So our next stage is to simply add all of the lights, and in RTX, this is going to look really nice. So adding lights was a difficulty, as you'll see later in the video, but we decided to try and light up as much as possible, and you can really see this build start to come to life as each individual lantern and glowstone is placed down. You can see this thing really start to quite literally sparkle in some cases. And that pretty much concludes and completes the build. And as you can see, RTX has a beautiful effect with the lighting through day and night on this build. This build has been extremely rewarding, and if you're wondering, it took us about 5 weeks to build between myself and PearlescentMoon, whose channel there is a link to in the description as well. But now, let's join Pearl and take a proper tour of this mega build. Pearl, we have finished the mega build.
It is so good to see that done.
Oh, look at that. Sunrise is hitting it.
Are you sure we haven't made a pink castle?
Yeah, it looks very Disney-esque right now.
It really does.
So I am really, really happy with how this has come out. Should we have a little tour around it?
Absolutely.
Look at the reflection. Oh my goodness, this is... I've got to admit, you do projects like this all the time, but for me, this is something that I don't normally do in this way. Big creative projects such as this. So for me, this is a bit of a new one, and I've got to admit, I'm a bit proud of us. It ended up being about 50-50, actually. It was a pure collaborative effort.
It was an absolute magical collaboration. To be honest, I don't really do structures of this scale, so this one was slightly new in that regard to me.
Well, looking at our initial, well, I say your initial sketch of what we were trying... It was a team effort, okay? Yeah, what we were trying to achieve, it's pretty spot on. It's not far off what we were inspired by and our plans and drawings and everything. It looks pretty much what we were trying to go for, and it's exactly what I was envisioning when we started this project. And
it really is.
I don't know about you, but I have actually learned an awful lot from you, so I want to, well, thank you for doing this with me. It was an absolute blast. I mean, we've worked together for a really long time, but I learned so much, especially when it came to the detailing, just things that I just haven't done in a while. And then there's things that we kind of discovered with some of the RTX lighting. Lighting was a big thing because it works very differently in RTX. And I had to learn a few tricks to because everything I knew about lighting was thrown out the window for this version. So
yeah,
you see, like,
works as though it's bouncing off surfaces and whatnot.
Yeah, so there's light hidden up here, and then there's some yellow concrete behind it, and it makes it look like there's a glow in the window, especially during nights. We'll come back to that. So yeah, RTX has transformed this build. In fact, why don't I just quickly turn off RTX so you can see just how much of a difference it makes. Check it out. It still looks great, but like it looks immediately darker. Just, I don't know, it looks weird. The terrain actually looks pretty nice in my opinion, but the actual build itself doesn't quite glow, if you know what I mean.
It looks more wooden without RTX on. It's kind of interesting.
It really, really changes the way that it looks. And so what it does is it path traces reflections, lights, shadows, and it light bounces off of all surfaces, right? That's how it works. And I don't know, it makes such a huge difference. I'll turn it back on and boom, it's infinitely better in my opinion. I played with RTX on for this entire project when we were in Bedrock, and I must admit it's become normal to me. This is how I want Minecraft to look. Are you going to miss it when you go back to Java again? Yeah, I think I will a little bit. There's an element to this that's just soft, and I really like it. It gives a lot more depth, and it creates really immersive shadows. So I don't know, I really like it.
I do as well. It kind of looks like a render almost, but you're in person and you can fly around it.
Yeah. So let's have a look around the back, because the time lapse that we did mainly focused on the front of the build, but actually this is a 360-degree build. We did actually do all of it, and each angle offers something different. This is a different experience of it, but we intentionally designed this build to be a sort of front-facing structure, right? We went, this is the front, and we really thought about it, even though it's a 360 degrees, so that the back of it is mainly all island and terrain, but you still got some structure at the back.
Kind of just peeks through and supposed to look like it's part of the mountain.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that I really like it. I really like how this has come out, because I think if you approach this build, you would know that this is the back, right? You'd know you're not quite there. So I think this is a really good example of what Minecraft with RTX for Windows 10 can be, and in the description I will also put a link to how you can install this as a resource pack. There are RTX maps available and you can find them in the marketplace. However, there is a way to actually put this in Minecraft and you can start your own world with RTX. That's right, isn't it, Pearl?
That's correct, yeah. NVIDIA has a lot of articles on their website that can be used to give instruction on how to really get into it yourself.
Wonderful. So that will be in the description as well. And I think what we should do is have a look at what this looks like during nighttime or sunset,
yes.
Because, I mean, at noon, where the sun's directly above us, this build actually doesn't come into its own. It's actually sunset and sunrise where this build really shines, because when we designed this, we actually specifically faced the build towards the east. That's not something we really talked about in part 1, because not every build you need to really think about all those details, but we specifically wanted it to face east so that the sunrise would hit it in the morning, and then also the sun would set behind it, and we'd just get this really nice effect. So if you are building a mega build, that is something you can think about if you're going to be using RTX or some sort of lighting engine like that. It does make a huge difference. It would be such a shame, actually, if this was rotated the wrong way round, we wouldn't have that effect at all.
We wouldn't have had our pink castle in sunrise.
No, we wouldn't. Okay, the sun is now going down, and the lights are going to start peeking through. Because it's such a huge build, we did have a bit of an issue trying to light it all right. Like, it was all of our usual techniques for lighting don't really work with RTX because it's more realistic. So, on Java Edition, if you popped a trapdoor, the light would still come through, which it technically doesn't make much sense. But in RTX, it reflects off of proper surfaces. So you've got to think a bit more realistically.
Honestly, that's part of the... Wait, what? What?
You've lost...
Is my skin messed up?
You've got a double chicken head going on.
Oh, hey, we all love the double chicken heads.
Oh, wow. Okay,
the
sun has gone down officially.
That's set really quickly.
Wow, look at that. That is wonderful. I really liked that. You have to kind of stay close, otherwise some of the lights despawn if you go too far away. But check it out. Like, this is what I mean about the windows glowing. That is a really nice effect. It makes it look like someone's home.
It's something we tried to do it without the concrete, and it was just too soft.
It didn't work, yeah.
No, so we had to use the concrete so that the light would bounce off the surface and create a nice, strong, warm glow that came from within.
And I think there's not a lot left to say. I think I'll probably do a big sort of cinematic showcase of the build, but I think that is pretty much it. It's even sparkling at the top. The end rods sparkle for some reason in RTX. It makes it look extremely magical. So I want to say a huge thank you to NVIDIA for sponsoring this video. It literally wouldn't have been possible without them. They sent the laptop so that we were able to record this. Pearl, your skin has gone beyond messed up now. I don't even know what's going on.
I'm a mutated chicken.
And I want to say a huge thank you to you, Pearl, for doing this with me. I wouldn't have been able to get through this without you and your expertise. You are a magnificent builder, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And, of course, thank you to you for watching. Now, enjoy some cinematic shots of this mega build.